forest, you know, backwards and forwards. And this forest, we were there for about, I would say about 6 weeks, something like that, because we arrived in Oranienburg, which is the outskirts of Berlin. There's another camp there. We arrived there, but this time we arrived on a train. And when we arrived, again, we wanted this train again in the forest. At least I could find where the squirrels eat, you know, the grass, anything bits and pieces, you know. I tried to, lucky enough, I had a very good stomach. There are no problems. So I eat whatever I can, the grass, weeds, whatever there was underneath the snow, and I drank the snow. So I managed to survive until I got on this train, because they locked us in for about 5 days again. And when they opened up the doors, I fell into the puddle. And then I said, well, I was out, unconscious for a while, and then all of a sudden I did come through. And I said, you know what, it's about time, I'm going to talk to that God of mine who's supposed to be helping me and everything else. My father was a rabbi, see what he does. So I started crying to God, and I said, well, maybe I'm not worthy because I'm not really all as religious, but my father said, could you please help me for my father's sake? In return, if you help me, in return, I says, I will go 1 year to a Jewish convent. So just 1 year. After that, I'll do what I want to do. But I'm going to pay you back just to help you. And as I finished praying and crying, would you believe it? The guards came up and brought us some coffee, you know, black coffee. So all of a sudden I had this coffee, and then they came back again and they bought us a piece of bread, but they throwed the bread like chickens, you know, they throwed it on the floor, didn't give it to us. So I was so weak I couldn't go and pick up this bread. So that guard came back again, he looked at me and he said, you know what, give that kid a chance to live as well. So he took away from a bigger guy, strong guy, broke a piece of bread off and gave me a piece of bread. And for some reason, after that I felt like God was me again. You know, before I didn't believe in what he's doing to, supposed to be the chosen people. You know what he's doing. So I started believing in God again now, and because I started getting better. From there we went on again, and march again on the forest, and then I had 2 friends, which I got pictures of here, 2 friends come from my village to study with my father. And I nearly collapsed on the march, and they picked me up and carried me like this, and so not to shoot me. And that's how we managed to get through to the next stop where we stopped. And you know, we slept in this forest on the grass, on the floor. It was ice cold. There was no blankets, nothing. There was any, but we lost it on the marches. And we arrived in a place called Flossenbürg after this, which is not far from Munich. They're going to take us to Dachau and kill us all there. Whoever was left, there wasn't many left anyway, but whoever was left. So, but when I got into Flossenbürg, I couldn't believe it. All I remember is this Flossenbürg, it was lots of lice. As soon as I got in there, I put my hand in there and it was just eating me up, you know, these lice. It was so much pain with this, in my back, and I don't know. So they gave me a clean shirt, would you believe it? I still had them lice. That's all I really remember. I know it was a quarry for working there. That's so bad. There were so many people in there, they couldn't keep them up, they had no room for them. So they sent us further march, death march, towards Dachau, which was actually was only about, I think it was about 25 miles away, Dachau. It was not far. When we came to, so we went to march again. They picked me again to go on, get on, okay. So we moved on back in the forest. And in the forest, I think there was loads of people dead again, you know, as we walked along. And we had in the forest, you know, a lot of them have died as well. But then they put us on the train, But the Americans were near there, and they bombed this train, thinking it's a Nazi train because they had the Nazi signs on these trains. So they killed off the locomotives, and then you know, I didn't know this because I went back again. I found out the farmers found 300. The Jews killed in that forest not far from the village, you know, but they wasn't killed from them. They were killed from the Americans. They thought they shot into the trains. So then we came into a village. The first time, I know this time I ever came into a village. After that, we no village. When we walked into this village, I remember going into this farmhouse and I saw a trough where the pigs were eating. And I put my head in there, eating with the pigs. First time I got something to eat. Whatever they had, I had. and I felt good. Then I went to bed on the hay, and the next morning, which was the 23rd of April, never forget that day, that's my day. 23rd of April, they told us to march again, we're going back to the forest. So as we got into the forest, all of a sudden I see all the guards disappear. You know, I didn't know that, and they all ran away. And then, as I was waiting there, I heard shooting going on everywhere, tanks coming in, you know. So I had a little bit blood coming from my feet with all that marching. And so I knocked myself into a foxhole. And I was there, this guy put his Tommy gun on me and he says to me, "Are you a Jew?" And I hesitated, didn't know what to say. And he said, "Yeah." He says, "Shalom." He says, "I'm also a Jew from New York." He says, "I'm a sergeant." I remember, so he took off the stupid clothes, and it was a necessity at the back, with nice boots. He gave me those boots. And he started crying and seeing me like this, and I cried with him. And I was nothing but bone, skin and bone. So he didn't have any flesh on me, nothing. I survived, I don't know. But anyway, he took me to the hospital. And in the hospital, the troops, the American troops, you know, there was never, they were black or they were white. I got blood from all of them. They all gave me 9 pints of blood that shot into me while I was there. And everybody, all the soldiers, you know, and I said, so it didn't make any difference, you know, to them, we were all the same. And then from there, would you believe it, I ended up, the Americans put me into a convent in a place called Indersdorf. And that's where I've been going the last 2 years. They always asked me to come over. And because I was liberated, I was there for 10 months after the war, you know. So, and there was run by the UNICEF, which now today is called UNICEF. In those days it was called UNRWA, UNRWA, and from Americans. And then these nuns, I tell you what, they couldn't do enough for you. They were really terrific, you know, to help you in every way. Maybe they got guilty conscience, I don't know, but I have no feelings with them whatsoever. And from there, in 1945, in November, I was actually, before that, I was looking in case my sister is still alive. I went to Prague to find her, and I found her, you know, someone told me she died of a heart attack, and somebody else told me she died of the runs, diarrhea, I don't know. I don't even know really what happened to her. Anyway, so then I decided to go back to the convent. When I got back to the convent, they said anyone here who's under 16 could go to England on the children transport. And this is, I said, I'm going to England, and that's I arrived in England in 1945. Funny enough, the day I arrived was Guy Fawkes there. I thought there was shooting again there. What's going on? and that's part of the story. What I'm trying to tell you actually, that hating, you know, to hate someone who said everybody suffers. And I can tell you now, there was 10 million Christians died as well. It's not just 6 million Jews. There was 1.5 children died, you know, under 12. And if you're going to Israel and Jerusalem, they call all their names out on the machine, you know, who died. You know, all the 1.5 million. It takes ages, but it's like a memorial place, like a museum. There was, I know in Auschwitz there was 1,900 priests who were murdered. There was some Polish people who were murdered, and there was also Russians, and there was also Jehovah's Witnesses. So everybody suffers when you start hating people for no reason. I never hated anybody, and I never hated even the Germans after this. Although we did that from the Americans, they said, everybody here can have 4 days, go and shoot anybody you want, do what you like. I couldn't shoot anybody, and I wouldn't know how to pick up a gun even. So. But I never believed it. I ended up marrying a German. You know, people don't believe me.